Today's sponsor is Audible.com, who has more than 180,000 audiobooks and spoken word audio products. Get a free audiobook of your choice at www.audibletrial.com/late-night-parents. Why Audible? Audible content includes more than 180,000 audio programs from the leading audiobook publishers, broadcasters, entertainers, magazine and newspaper publishers, and business information providers. That's audibletrials.com/late-night-parents.
So this is Late Night Parents. This is Ted Hicks. And as always, ways to get in contact with us is latenightparents.com. For those of you that are slightly lazy with your keyboard, lnp.tv. And I'm pleased to have special guests that we're meeting with for the first time, Miss Heather Finn, the author of the Nutty Bug books. Heather, welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Ted, for having me on the program. I'm doing great.
That is wonderful. Well, I will tell you, before we even get started, I want to say thank you to Miss Amanda Bush for being able to put this together. Amanda was very helpful with connecting me with you in regards to taking a look at your book, which I really did enjoy. And
I'm so glad to hear that. And Amanda's wonderful as well.
Yes, she really is. I mean, it's great. So, wanted to talk to you about a couple of things. Tell us about yourself. Then you can tell us about the book or the inspiration for writing the book.
Sure. Well, let's take that in several steps here. So, I live up in Marblehead, Massachusetts, and I am a wife and a mother of 2 children. I'm actually an identical triplet and the 8th of 10 children. So
wow.
I grew up in a large family, and I grew up listening to a lot of stories. And, I would say that when I became a mom, I shared stories from my youth with my kids because, kids are always asking you to tell them stories. And when I ran out of stories to tell, I began to write my own, create my own. And, it was interesting. I began searching for, fun yet educational books to teach my kids about good health and hygiene. And what I found is that those books are hard to find, especially books that educate but engage at the same time. So, the book that we're here to talk about is Heroic Henry and the Nutty Bugs, and it really is a book that teaches children all about tree nut and peanut allergies, again, in a fun and entertaining way. And we know that, food allergies are on the rise.
Totally.
For a quick synopsis, I'd just say that, Henry's the main character in the book, and he loves to eat peanut butter on literally anything and everything. But the problem with his peanut butter eating habit is his little sister Maggie, who just so happens to be allergic to tree nuts and to peanuts. And despite her allergies, Henry just doesn't quite understand why he has to be so careful about eating peanut butter around her. So as the story unfolds, Henry meets the Nutty Bugs, and the Nutty Bugs are really my acronym for peanut and tree nut allergies. And these Nutty Bugs teach Henry about allergic reactions and, highlight that they can potentially be life-threatening. And then Henry uses what he learns from the Nutty Bugs to help a friend at school and then becomes known as Heroic Henry. But I would tell you that anyone listening to this program needs to read the book to determine who the real hero in the story is. And you asked me a question about what inspired me to write this specific book. And,
yes.
Again, I think, our kids are a great source of inspiration in our lives. And here, too, they inspired me to write this book because they have 2 cousins who have food allergies.
Okay.
One cousin has, again, what I'm going to deem a nutty allergy, so is allergic to nuts and peanuts or tree nuts. And another cousin has general food allergies, soy, wheat, egg, dairy, you name it. And my kids spend a lot of time with their cousins, and they've often asked me a lot of questions pertaining to their cousin's food allergies. They'll ask me what would happen if, their cousins were exposed to a food allergen, and, how would they know if their cousins were having a food allergy reaction.
Right.
So my kids had a lot of questions, and, recognizing that I'm a mom and I'm not a doctor, and that food allergy discussions can be pretty complicated. I recognized that I needed to find a resource to help answer their questions and really better educate all of us on the topic. So I did research, and this is a really interesting statistic. So I learned that 1 in 13 children in the United States has some sort of a food allergy, and that was very eye-opening for me. So
Really?
again, I looked for resources to help answer those questions, and I really couldn't find any children's books that I thought were engaging, for such a deep topic. And most of the books were very educational, but difficult and a bit dry, in my opinion. So I embarked on writing this book. Really, it's a long-winded answer, but in an attempt to answer my kids' questions, and recognizing that if my kids had questions about it, that there were a lot of other children who were asking their parents the same questions. And hopefully it addresses a serious topic, again, in a fun and engaging manner.
That is excellent. That is excellent. So, hey, Heather, I want to ask you, this is in a series of books? Like, what are the plans here?
Yeah, it is a series of books, and actually Heroic Henry and the Nutty Bugs is my second book. My first book is called Fabulous Farrah and the Sugar Bugs, and again, that was inspired by my daughter, several years back, when getting her to brush her teeth was very difficult. And, I was looking for a good book to really teach children about, good oral hygiene and why it is they have to brush their teeth and floss their teeth, because there are a lot of kids' books, that address the topic, but it's more about, a visit to the dentist or a visit to the doctor. And this was more about, what would happen if I don't brush or floss. And, the whole philosophy for me with my books is really about engaging kids, entertaining them, educating them, and then hopefully empowering them. Because I'll tell you, when I wrote Fabulous Farrah and the Sugar Bugs, the idea was that my daughter really wouldn't brush her teeth. And one day, I finally said to her, that's fine. If you don't want to brush your teeth, don't do it. But recognize that the sugar bugs are going to come visit you tonight. And her eyes got wide, and she looked at me, and she said, "What's a sugar bug?" And I went on to explain to her that sugar bugs is actually an acronym for plaque, and what happens if plaque stays on your teeth, etc. So it's really funny. I mean, she was my my muse, and she listened to so many iterations of versions of sugar bugs before I ultimately published it. And it's funny because to this day she may say, "Mom, can I skip brushing my teeth tonight?" And I'll say, "Sure, absolutely, but remember the sugar bugs might come," and then off to the bathroom she goes. So it's empowering, right? Kids are empowered to make their decision to brush their teeth. And as a parent, I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever received was to pick your battles. So, and then the funny thing about sugar bugs is I started sharing it with some of my friends, and it was a great resource. They were like, "Oh my goodness, I told my children if they didn't brush, the sugar bugs are going to come," and and the kids are now empowered to do it. So the Sugar Bugs is the first book. Nutty Bugs is the second book. I'm currently working on a project called Remarkable Ryan and the Love Bugs, which is all about, the importance of emotional health and well-being for kids, because, the idea is that kids really need to feel loved and supported so that they're empowered to have self-confidence. And I hope to have a long line of bug books. I see litter bugs coming, and which is all about the environment, and we're going to do one about manner bugs. Because I think in a lot of respects, I feel like several people have lost the idea of good manners.
Yes, they have.
so hopefully my bugs will have a long lifeline.
Oh, definitely, Heather. That is a great explanation. I'm really excited about the next line of your bug book line. All together. I do have a question about the business side of this, publishing. tell us, what were some of your, easy wins? What were some of the pain points in getting your book published?
Well, that's a great question. So when I embarked on, writing this series of books, I really wanted to control my content.
Okay.
So I decided to self-publish my books. So my company is called littleharborbooks.com, and I use Amazon as my resource for self-publishing. And I have a wonderful woman by the name of Bonnie Lemire who can put your book together in the appropriate format, and she's my illustrator as well. And so, basically the whole idea of self-publishing is very interesting because, when you go the traditional route and contact publishing companies, by and large you have to give up control of your content.
Yes.
And I just didn't want to do that because, goes back to this whole series of books. I have big dreams for my bugs. And so, for me it was really learning everything there is to know about the world of publishing. And it was a huge learning curve. But now, if anybody out there is interested in self-publishing, please contact me because I have some good stories to share. And, I would say, the other interesting thing, too, for me is that along with my books, I've created these little short cartoons to go along with my books. And so, if you go to my website at littleharborbooks.com, you can go to the website and you can click on the Sugar Bugs cartoon. And essentially, I don't know if you'd remember, Ted, when I was growing up, there was a program called Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock, correct.
Yeah, do you remember it? Conjunction,
I do.
Junction, and
What's Your Function?
Yep.
Yes.
What's Your Function? And I'm Only a Bill Sitting Here on Capitol Hill.
Yes, definitely.
And I thought, those were those little cartoons that were played on Saturday morning cartoons, and they were quick songs that rhymed, but you took something away from it. So the idea of my Sugar Bug and my Nutty Bug cartoon is that kids can watch the Sugar Bug cartoon and know I'm a sugar bug known as plaque, and it's the sugar on your teeth I like to attack. Or they can click Nutty Bugs and say I'm a nutty bug known as a nutty allergy, and I can cause trouble for the friends that I meet. And it's a quick way for these guys to get, the understanding of, why you should brush your teeth for sugar bugs,
yes.
and why you need to be aware of nut and peanut allergies, all around you for nutty bugs. And again, that was part of the reason I chose to self-publish, because I wanted to control my cartoons as well.
Yes. Oh my goodness, that is so awesome.
Thank you. I think so too. It's been fun.
The one thing I do have to say to you, Heather, is the fact that, and it's a question. It's more of a rhetorical statement. Whatever happened to the to the cartoons on Saturday morning? I
know. It was so wonderful, wasn't it?
It really was. It really was. And I was speaking with one of my friends recently, I would say last weekend. I said, remember our childhood? And, my buddy was like, yeah. And I said, do you see what the kids of today are missing out on?
Yeah. Well, I think largely for us, though, it was we only had a certain number of channels, right?
That's true.
So if we wanted to watch TV, that was the content that we had. So we had, the Barbara Papas and, Scooby-Doo.
Yes.
And all of those fun cartoons and, the Looney Tunes cartoons, et cetera. And now, the medium has changed dramatically. It
really has.
There's cable, there's streaming. The generation today just wants to pick a show and binge watch the show.
That's it.
My son, is 9 years old, and his preferred medium is an iPad watching YouTube. He likes to watch.
I was just going to say that. My son is 9, Heather, and he has a TV in his room. And he has, and this is not a promotion for Verizon, even though they do sponsor our show. But so we have a, Verizon cable box, which is hardly turned on. He's watching YouTube.
Yeah.
He's watching what he wants to watch on YouTube. And I'm like, oh, my.
It is. I think there's a whole generation. And, there are certainly famous YouTubers, right?
Yes.
My kids talk about, celebrity YouTubers. These guys who have grown their own channels and, gotten up to a number of viewers, and they have so many views per day. But I also think, being able to go on to a medium like YouTube and just search for whatever it is you're interested in is really appealing to kids versus, sitting down and, watching some show on TV that, is the only show in town. There's just so much content available. And, it's obviously been a challenge for companies like Verizon and, Comcast and Netflix
Correct.
and Disney and all the major networks.
Correct.
Right? They're all trying to figure out how to get as many viewers as they possibly can and what kind of content is going to be received well by, different generations of folks.
Correct. And it's more about pushing versus pulling. It's more on the lines of, okay, hey, this is, here's today's programming, and you're like, you know what, I want to just choose this. And I know it's scheduled to come on at 3 o'clock, but I want it right now.
Yeah.
And it's the traditional TV had a great 50-year run.
It did. It had a great 50-year run, but I think, viewers want options.
Yes.
And, everybody has to respond to providing those viewers with options. And, I even noticed myself, I obviously I don't have a ton of time to watch shows. And, I'm sure you get recommendations from friends all the time. Oh, have you seen, Breaking Bad? Have you seen Lost? Have you seen whatever it is? And you say no. And then, the option to be able to go on to Netflix and, pull up season 1 of Breaking Bad and, watch it while you're on a treadmill or doing whatever. It's
awesome.
Great. It's awesome.
It's awesome.
And so,
it's really awesome.
Maybe if we had grown up in a generation like that, it would be just, standard. But I like the option now. So I think our kids are going to have a really interesting, it's going to be interesting to see how media changes for them as they grow up.
Here's the last thing I'll say to you, Heather. I just remember it used to be, going to the library, walking, the library for...
Do you remember?
Yes.
Going through the index cards.
Yes.
Trying to find your book and what row it was in. I remember it so well.
I remember that stuff. I remember it being 3 blocks away from my house, and I would have to go and walk there with my library card and, and go find exactly what you want to find and,
And take it out for 2 weeks and make sure it wasn't overdue.
Yes. That doesn't. I'm not saying that doesn't exist anymore, but it's a different world.
It doesn't really exist anymore. It's a very different world. Yeah. It's this advent of being able. It's what it is. It's just the convenience economy. Everybody wants everything at the drop of a hat, right?
Right.
They want to be able to go online and click something and say, "I want that book. It's here."
Exactly.
It's interesting, and you miss it on some level because I feel like there's learning involved in that process, right? There's learning, and you go to the library and you have to figure out how to find my book, and you have to engage with the librarian and ask questions.
Yes.
I think a lot of that is lost today on the generation of kids because there's not a lot of engagement. You walk down the street and you see kids looking down, especially now with the Pokemon craze and their own
my
Pokemon,
goodness.
but. It's even, you go to a restaurant and kids are on their phones, or whole families are on their phones.
Oh,
right? No
my
one's
goodness.
engaging anymore.
Heather, we can go on for days right now because I will tell you.
Ted. Boy, could we go on for days.
Heather, I could tell you this much. So my 9-year-old and my 14-year-old, so we go out to dinner with Mom, and we go out most time once a week, sometimes twice a week. And, the one rule.
That sounds very much like me, Ted.
Put your phone away. No phones.
Yep. Especially the 14-year-old, right?
Yes. Oh, my goodness. She's...
Because I have a 13-year-old. And,
yes. She's a handful.
My husband often says that the phone is poison.
I don't disagree with your husband. I don't disagree. And with your... I would love to have you back on to talk about screen time. Just your, how you're dealing with it. Because I can tell you with me, it's kind of like I'm an IT person by trade, so I've been in information technology for 19 years.
You've seen a lot of changes. Yeah.
I'll turn off the router. I'll turn off Internet access for that specific device between these specific hours. But, I'm sitting here saying, what are some of these parents that are not IT people that are technically challenged, technology-wise? How are they dealing with this?
Well, I mean, that gets into a lot of different conversations outside of screen time, too,
Yes,
right? Because it
yes.
gets into conversations about parenting and parenting styles, and everybody has
Right.
their own way of doing things. And it
Right.
goes back to why I wrote Sugar Bugs. It's pick your battles, right?
Yes.
You've got to pick your battles with your kids. And, I think you just have to set up rules in your house that, screen time is not allowed for a certain, from a certain time forward, or, you limit screen time to 30 minutes a day or an hour a day, and you stand by
Right.
it, right?
Right.
And if you don't stand by it, you actually deliver on a consequence, right? You
Yes.
take your child's phone away for 2 weeks, and we know that, oh my goodness, what are they going to do without a phone or an iPad for 2 weeks? They're not going to know anybody or anything going on. But at the same time, it's what's best for them.
It really is. Heather, I will say this much. It wasn't an argument. It was a spirited discussion that I had with a hardware provider that, can control internet time and everything else like that. And I said,
yeah, interesting.
This is digital parenting. I was like, okay, this is digital parenting. Whatever happened to, hey, I'm the dad, and here's mom, and here are the list of rules, and this is what you have to abide by.
Which is how you grew up, and which is how I grew up, and I actually feared my dad. When he said no,
yes,
it was no. Right. Yeah. But I think, it goes back to the whole discussion about, a lot of parents try to be friends with their children today, and it's great. It's great to be friends with your children, right? We all should be friends with our children, and our kids need to feel comfortable such that they talk to us, because there's a lot of stuff today that they deal with that we didn't have to deal with, and it's a whole social media influence, right?
Yes,
and,
yes.
Being able to go onto YouTube with our 9-year-olds watching YouTube and, clicking something that takes you to somewhere you shouldn't be, right?
Correct.
There's all that we have to be aware of. But it is basic. It goes back to basic principles of what are the rules in your home.
Right.
And if you don't have the rules, it's difficult to limit things. It's difficult to limit screen time. You just need to set up the rules. And if one of your children breaks the rule, you really need to have a consequence. Because kids get into this role of, I know I'm not supposed to be using my phone right now, but it's okay, and mom won't care.
Right.
Mom should care, and mom should say, you know what, you specifically knew you weren't supposed to use the phone after a certain hour. I am now taking your phone away for 2 weeks. Because that seems to be what motivates kids
That's
today.
the showstopper. That's the showstopper right there. Give me all your devices.
To the world. It's
yes.
their lifeline to the world.
Give me
I'm sure you
all
see,
of your devices and put them on my table and don't touch them.
That's right. Because there's so much. I mean, God, we could spend hours talking about why I think iPhones and some of the social media is poison for kids.
It really
but
is.
like you said, you just have to navigate it as a parent with a fine line. And you want your kids to be able to talk to you always, and you want to empower them. You want to empower them to have self-confidence and make good decisions and be responsible. But it becomes increasingly difficult in the digital parenting age, for sure.
Totally. Heather, it's been such a blast talking with you. Like I said, this is the first time. This definitely won't be the last time. I'm not sure if you know, because I've told Amanda. So I do a Sunday night 7 p.m. radio show. It's a local radio, 1240 a.m. in Long Island. I would love to have you on as a guest sometime in the future, and we can, you might want to say debate, but it's not really a debate because we're going to agree on dealing with parenting in this electronic age. But before you go, I wanted you to plug your website, your books, and the Bug Book series. You take that Bug Book series and you can apply it to different situations, and that's what's so beautiful about it. And I was just really glad to be able to connect with you and talk with you about it. But tell us best ways to get in contact with you via social media, best ways to get in contact with, finding out about the Bug Book series, all the above.
Well, thank you so much. And again, Ted, thank you so much for having me in the program. It's been such a pleasure. I would ask folks to reach out to me. I'm at littleharborbooks.com. You can also find me on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I'm currently working on rolling out a Facebook page, and I'll be on Instagram soon. But if, for those folks who are interested in, the cartoons that I was referencing, you can find those at littleharborbooks.com, or you can find them on YouTube. And, it sounds like based on our conversation, I would love to come onto your program at any time and have a friendly debate with you about parenting or anything else. And it certainly sounds like I need to be considering a book about the tech bugs.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yes,
definitely. Oh,
absolutely.
my goodness. I can't wait for it.
The digital bugs.
Yes, digital bugs. Heather, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Ted. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
If you like your radio a bit on the fantastic side, try listening to the Happy Hour Network on Blog Talk Radio. The Happy Hour Network features live shows such as Late Night Parents with Ted Hicks, Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue with Todd Vandenberg, and Lee Vowell, The Seahawks Show with Kevin Daggett, and NBA Full Court Press with Danny Thompson. You can also catch podcasts like The Fwat Show, the Earnestly Speaking Podcast, Cinema Savants, and The Tennis Scene, found at blogtalkradio.com/Happy Hour Network. The Happy Hour
Jama'l
Network,
Chukueke.
radio worth
Please
listening
join
to.
me in welcoming our guest today, Ted Hicks. Ted, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being on Diversity Dad. Just a little bit about Ted. Ted is the host of a fabulous show called Late Night Parents, which is on WGBB, which is Long Island, New York's oldest radio station. Ted is also the father of a 9-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. He has a job in information technology, and Ted's hobbies are gaming, blogging, and, of course, podcasting. And this is a curious one. He said that you are a fantasy football expert, a so-called expert.
Aren't we all?
I know, aren't we all, right? So when you say expert, how can you help me with my fantasy football selections? Like, can you help me out since you're an expert?
Jama'l, thanks for having me on the show. Been a fan of the blog, of the podcast. So once again, and thank you for joining the show 2 weeks ago, Late Night Parents 2 weeks ago. Your interview has generated a heck of a lot of traffic on my site, so I want to say thank you once again.
Cool.
I'm going to say everyone's an expert in their own mind. So I'll start and I'll finish with that. I'm an expert when I win in fantasy football, and I'm just like, the ordinary Joe when I'm not winning, or, I've only been in playing fantasy football for the last 4 years. But of those 4 years, I've won in 3 of those years.
Wow. So what would you say, like, who's the guy to get? Like, who's a hot commodity to get in fantasy football this upcoming season?
Man. You can say Antonio Brown. You can say, once he gets through his suspension, Le'Veon Bell. Other mainstays like Adrian Peterson will always, provide the necessary points for you. It's sad to see people like Megatron go. Aaron Rodgers is always going to provide those specific points. I'm guessing it's going to be a down year for Tom Brady because of the 4-game suspension. And of course, Odell Beckham Jr., you could put 3 defenders on him and he's still going to come up with, unbelievable points. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a quick overview, but like I said, I am a legend in my own mind.
Aren't we all when it comes to fantasy football, right? It's hilarious. Well, again, we're so happy that you're joining us on Diversity Dad. We wanted just to get right into our first question. Ted, with your experience that you have as a parent and all your personal life journey that you've been on, what makes you a diversity dad?
I think that's a good question. Well, if you look at the term diverse, you think about the old school dads. I think about like my dad. He was old school. Hey, come in, he's going to work his shift. He's going to speak a few words of wisdom to us and, either go to sleep or, handle his business, do what he needs to do with leading the family. And it worked for us back then, but that was a different era. I think now in our era, in our, technology enhanced era, technology rich era, you've got to be in the know. You've got to know what your kids are doing, what your kids are into. So whether it's on being a fan or a follower or a friend of them on Snapchat or Instagram and stuff like that, being able to have that open and honest conversation with your kids, if they're at that point. One of my kids, she's a teen, and, my son, he just turned 9. You gotta watch some of the shows that they're watching. I think you focus on being hip, being in the know, while also parenting with them, because then you're not talking 2 different languages. And that was the thing, I think, with my dad. It worked for me that we were talking 2 different languages, because, he would come and watch his TV shows, and the stuff that I would watch and he would watch was, with the age gap, there was a slight disconnect. But nowadays, where everything is like right now, this very second, hey, this information is dropping right now. There is no, going to the library or finding out about it through the print newspaper. Like I said, you got to be in the know with your kids to be able to have that conversation at their level, and also to bring it up at your level. And it's worked for me. I'm not saying that's a recipe for success for everyone, but for the Hicks household, it has worked, and I kind of live by it. And I kind of enjoy being able to, at times my kids will be watching something on YouTube and come running downstairs. Hey, Dad, did you hear about? Sometimes I do beat them to the punch and tell them what they're thinking. I'm like, oh my goodness, how'd you know? Are you a mind reader? So it's like, it's good to stay, if you can, stay a step ahead, if you can. But like I said, it's so good that I'm able to connect with them on their level and talk about some of the things that they like to talk about. Some of the music, some of the overall celebrities, and also then tie it in with some of the things that I tend to talk to them about, maturing and getting older and making the right decisions in life and stuff like that. So it's like a nice, easy balance.
No, absolutely. You mentioned that, some of the music that you may listen to, that your children listen to. What are some of the artists that you like that your children listen to?
Well, I do. So I'm 45, but I will listen to Drake.
Drake is good.
Yeah. I try not anymore to listen to Lil Wayne or Nicki Minaj, stuff like that, like Little Boosie and all this other stuff, Bryson Tiller, and these are people that I couldn't probably point out on the street. but knowing that they're reciting their lyrics and, they're influencing them in some ways, I try to, learn the lyrics and try to hear what are they talking about, to hear what the narrative is. And because, like I said, with your kids, being an adult and being a parent, you got to connect with them on some certain level. And it's so hard because it's just like, like mom has her way of connecting with the kids. And it's more on the lines of, hey, I'm your friend. You can come talk to me and this. I'm totally the opposite. Jama'l, I'm like, I don't want to be your friend, but I want to know what's going on in your world. I want to know what's the stuff that you're watching on TV. I mean, it's easy for me because I've been in IT for all these years. Hey, I can pull up their web history and go straight to the router and pull that information up and, find out who they text with, some of the type of conversations. But, I mean, is that snooping? Is that spying? I mean, do I work for the NSA? No. So I'm going to try the generic way and, connect with them. So the one way is through their pop culture likes and, the people that they're listening to on their iPhone.
Right. And Diversity Dads up there, it's about understanding and being hip to what your child is being influenced by or who your child is being influenced by. And it's not being nosy, right? It's just being informed, as Ted alluded to, as far as just being in the know, being a part of the right now technology, which is, we can't escape it, the iPhone or iPad or any sort of technology nowadays. So very, very interesting points that you made, Ted. So you mentioned as far as just old school. Do you consider yourself old school or kind of new school or kind of in the middle?
I guess we would all, once you hit 40, you want to consider yourself somewhere in the middle. But at some point, you do become old school. You kind of have to embrace it. So Do I consider myself old school? I would say yes. I do consider myself old school. But old school is, when I would say like my dad, that would be officially old school. But as you can hear the sound effects, I think the kids are going out. They're going outside in the front of the house. But yeah, I would consider myself old school. I mean, I embrace it because I've come up in a different era.
Absolutely. Now, with your kids, do they ever ask you questions as far as just like some of the things that you went through when you were growing up?
They ask me questions, and even when they don't ask me questions, I try to help them embrace the situation of what they're going through, and I would just give like analogies of the situation that they're experiencing and, an overview of, hey, when I was in your shoes, I had a situation that was XYZ, and it might not be that existing situation you're going through, but here's what I did. So this might help you out, or, just not telling them what to do, because in the end, it's their life and something that they're going to need to experience. But we have to, as parents, at times, we are the, chief influencers in their life. So if you know your kid is heading down the wrong road, do you say, oh my goodness, that's my son's life and he's going to have to witness this on his own? No, you're going to try and point him or her in the right direction. So I kind of take a step back and I don't try to be too overarching, but I try to, if they're going in an odd direction, try to point them in the right direction, and provide the substance on why they should go in that specific direction.
Right. Can you give our diversity dads an example of maybe something recently that happened, like you kind of seen your kid maybe veering off the path a little bit and you just kind of gave him a talking to or a quick conversation as far as just the right thing to do?
Yeah, sure. And gladly. And like I said, my life is an open book. I talk every week on Wednesdays on our local podcast on the Blog Talk Network, on the Happy Hour Network, blogtalkradio.com, about situations that I've gone through, situations my children have gone through, where I'm like, oh man, I think I failed as a dad, or maybe I didn't fail overall. So there's certain times when you run into situations when you see things going south and you try to prevent a change. You really try to prevent that from happening, and you wonder how you can influence that. Or is it something that you can't influence at all? I think of the situation, I think of the word bullying and cyberbullying as a situation. So there was a situation, I think it was this summer, where my son was at summer camp, and a situation appeared where someone that he was associated with was making fun of another child, and my son was laughing and joining in on it. So here I am, it's the pot calling the kettle black, because from time to time we do all different types of cyberbullying segments, how to identify a cyberbully, but I had to take some of those tips that I had, how to identify if your child is a bully. And I had to pull my son to the side to say, you're at a camp where it's zero tolerance to bullying. That's number one. Right. Number two, here are some tips on whether or not you were actually bullying this other child. Any involvement with that situation. Hey, you're an accomplice. You're bullying this child. If you sit there, someone makes a joke about this kid, and you're laughing and egging other people on, you're bullying. So it was trying to explain to my son that, yes, in that instance, you were bullying by egging the other people on, by laughing, by participating in this type of stuff. So it was so funny because one of our guests, I think a week or two later, one of our cyberbullying guests, and I sat there and I expressed to them, hey, here's the situation. Please tell me how I handled this situation. Did I handle it decently? Is there anything I could have done differently? That would have been the situation that I would say where I had to pull my coat, because I felt as a parent that I'm trying to protect my child. when you have your child and your dad or your mom, you're going to step out there with your chest out like, oh, I'm protecting my child. My child would never. How many times have you watched TV and there's been some type of violent crime and the parent is out there like, my child would never do this. And the parent doesn't even know where the child was the night before. And I kind of go back to during the Baltimore riots when we had that one mother that saw her son rioting and grabbing, a flat screen TV, the situation happened with Freddie Gray in that police van. That mom saw her son on TV, went out there and laid hands on her son. Some people were like, oh, she was being abusive. But some people were like, no, she was being a damn good parent.
Right.
So it's situations where you kind of have to check yourself. You kind of have to check your ego also, because your child is your soft spot. Your child is someone that you have on a pedestal. That's your crown jewel. And a lot of times in certain situations like that, when they're wrong, you having to chastise them or someone else chastising your child and then letting you know about it, it's a bitter pill to swallow, Jama'l.
Right. And that's a great point, taking a step back, because your child is your soft spot, but diversity dads out there, it's always better for you or your spouse, your partner, to take that action on your child rather than law enforcement, right? Because that can turn ugly quick. So thank you for sharing that story, Ted. Definitely appreciate it. So just to change gears a little bit, you have a lot of great stuff going on with your radio show and gaming, which I want to talk to you about here in a little bit. What's the one thing that has you most excited about being a dad?
I tell you, and this is going to get me in trouble, so I want to make sure my wife is not in earshot. I love being a dad, period. I love my children. I love my daughter. But being a dad, there's nothing like having a son and molding that son and seeing some of the situations you've experienced. And, that person kind of being the mini me. That right there just does something to me. And like I said, I love my daughter just the same. We have a phenomenal relationship. But I'm telling you, having a son, nothing like it. Nothing like it. And for all dads that have daughters, your daughter is going to love you the very most. But that love that you have for your son, because you're out there, whether you're playing catch with him or you're wrestling with him, or you're taking him to the ball game, basketball game, or whatever the situation is, taking them to one of their Little League or CYO events or games, and explaining to them when, they succeed, explaining to them when they fail, when they're upset, when they're happy, when they might not have had the game that they wanted to have. There is no situation like that. I mean, I'm sorry. That's the stuff that a dad has with his son. And for the most part, the moms don't have that with their son. I'm sure the moms that have to do the heavy lifting, like the single moms, they will have some piece of that. But being able to be there for those specific endeavors that they run into, it's something that you sit back and you smile and you're cheering. I got to tell you, Jama'l, my daughter, she was in CYO basketball. I'm not sure if she's going to play high school basketball, but being at her games, in a very, very tight game in these type of leagues, there's the coaches, which I can never coach because I'm too connected with the kids and too emotional. So I'm that parent advocate that keeps the score. So I'm sitting there at the desk going back and forth and talking to the referees and everything else like that. But that experience of fatherhood is something. Because, like I said, you get to see the highs and the lows. When they win by 15 or they get blown out by 30, you get to see that aspect of it. And trust me, being in a relationship where the mom is handling certain pieces of it and where I handle certain pieces of it, it works. And then there are times we intersect on certain topics. That works too. But for me being a dad, I'm telling you, having my son is something wonderful. But, like I said, I want to temper it by saying having a daughter is also great too.
That's amazing. And I only have that experience of a daughter so far, right? So definitely hope to have that experience with a son someday. So you mentioned that you like gaming. So do you play like video games with your son and daughter? And if so, are there like ones that you like?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been talking to my son about starting up a gaming YouTube channel and stuff like that. And because we'll sit there and we'll watch other people on their gaming channels. But for the most part, my daughter's room, she has a PlayStation. My son's room, he has the Xbox One. So a lot of times I'll spend, whether it's Madden, whether it's NBA 2K, or if it's UFC 2, you know, kind of like that one-on-one competition where you're sitting there and you're talking trash with your kids. Like I said, you got to connect with them on their level.
Absolutely. And what better level to connect than video games, right?
Right. You got to connect with them. So what you're connecting with them is, you know, them understanding the game, the concept of the game. Once again, connecting at their level, whether it's you're having fun or whether it's you're doing a little trash talking. I remember we were playing UFC 2 and the game had just been released. And I don't know, I think I had John Bones Jones. And I laid my son out. And it was so funny because he stood up, dropped the console, and just walked off.
Nice. Good job, Ted.
I had to catch him to let him know about being, you know, a sore loser. And, you know, the negative side of being a sore loser. That's something really you shouldn't really do. Now, granted, I was doing that. I was beating him like that for a lesson because I just wanted to let him know that, you know, everything in life, you're not going to win. You're not going to win. Every match that you go one-on-one, you're not going to win. And you need to know how to be in defeat. You need to know how to be just as graceful as when you're winning. That's what I would say in lines of playing games and gaming with them. I don't do anything online. It's really more just playing local video games with the kids and talking with them. And, you know, it's, believe it or not, playing a game with them or video game with them, they open up to so many different other topics. Because
what's the most like interesting topic that you had playing video games with your children?
Just situations of where they've been in school. So we're playing one game, and they're telling me about a situation where they've been in school and they might have failed, or a situation where they felt uncomfortable, or where someone might have said something to them that they didn't like. All these situations are something that if I wasn't engaging them in games, how would I get this information out of them? I'm sure a baby mom would know how to get this information out of them. But the casual, hey, what happened in school? How was school today? It gives you, you know, a 1 or 2 word answer.
That's fascinating that something that simple, granted it's engaging, can bring information out of your child. That's amazing.
I'm telling you, it's one of these days I'm going to write a book. The dads in general should write a book and everyone gets a chapter for themselves. Because if you think about it, Jama'l, every time, and I say this all the time, and a lot of the moms get at me, especially on the show, everything nowadays, it's marketed towards the moms. And it's always been like that.
And why do you think that, Ted? What's your opinion on that?
Well, the moms do deserve it, but the dads do play a part in this. You know, it's kind of like the dads don't play a part in this. The marketing dollars are pointed towards the moms. And I look at it as something like this. I don't care where you live in America, if it's an urban area or, you know, rural area, you name it. Think of a holiday, Mother's Day. Is it a man-made holiday? Some people might say so. Try to go to the mall the weekend before leading up to Mother's Day. Go to any mall across America and try to drive your car into the mall and try and find parking space.
It's a zoo.
It's a zoo. But fast forward, Jama'l, 30 days from that point in May, Father's Day. You could pull right up to the first spot.
Interesting.
And think about it. Just think about it for 1 second. You could pull up to the first parking spot, and you're like, wait a minute. And then you look at the marketing dollars given from Mother's Day to Father's Day, day and night. Look at the overall revenue for Mother's Day to Father's Day, day and night. And then, you have some of the, we're about to go here now, Jama'l. I just want to let you know.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay. So you get to the point, you're like, wait a minute. Because I've been saying this for years, and I always say this to my kids. I say this to my wife, and I'm like, yeah, because for Mother's Day, this past Mother's Day, I asked my wife, Pam, I said, okay, what do you want from the kids for Mother's Day? She was like, well, I don't want anything. I was like, okay, we got to go through this almost 20 years. So she says, get me a Burberry jacket. I said, okay, tell me what color you want. And it was a $600 jacket, Jama'l.
Oh, wow.
And I said, this jacket is $600. I said, I hope you wear it. I kept it 100 with her. I was like, I hope you wear it. I said, I hope you wear it until it's summertime. So we got her Burberry jacket, and we got her, I stopped into, I think, Sears. We got her some earrings. So I said, okay, kids, got her the earrings, and we got her the Burberry jacket, all right? Boom. 1, 2, 3. It was an utter zoo in there. Both places I went to.
Wow.
But you flash forward. Father's Day, you walk into the mall. You can go to any store you want to go to. There's no lines. There's no nothing. And then, you're sitting there like, should we be smiling about this? I mean, I really think this has to do with the marketing dollars. A lot of other people will say something else. They will say, oh, no, it's due to the deadbeat dads, and it's due to this, and it's due to that. Come on. Every dad out there is not a deadbeat. Knock it off.
Right. And how can we get that message across? Do you think it's just dads in general being portrayed badly in the media, or, are there some truth to it as well? What are your thoughts?
Everything that's said, a lot of things that's said, there are always some truth to that situation. But I don't think it's the majority. But I do think we don't see enough stories about the dads that are doing the right things. You always hear, you turn on the morning news. What do you hear? Do you hear positive stories, or do you hear negative stories? That's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, probably mostly negative.
Right. Do you hear about, here's this great dad who is doing this? And, you see the picture of the dad who's combing his daughter's hair. Yes, if you put something like that on Facebook, it goes viral because they're like, dads don't do anything. They just sit there and they're holding their beer and they're belching and watching football with their hands in their pants. Because that's what's burned into the minds, whether it's, cable TV or network TV. It's burned into, I don't want to say the marketing dollars are pushing out that image, but we're not pushing out the productive, positive images of the dads going above and beyond. I'm not just talking about urban, African American or Latino. I'm talking about white America too. I'm talking about everyone. It goes across the board. So we see things on the web. We tend to believe them when they're burned into our minds. Like if I say to you, Jama'l, for the next 6 podcasts over the next 6 weeks that, hey, I think Donald Trump is a great candidate for you to vote for. I say that long enough, you start to say, hey, you know what, Ted? That Donald Trump might be a great person. And we should be looking at the value and seeing where that specific person's values, if they line up with our values. So I think the media, yes, it does play a part in all it is. I think, yes, there's a lot of negative attention out there towards the dads. There's a lot of dads that are busting their humps all over the world that are doing the right thing, that are there with their kids, that have a relationship, a healthy, functional relationship with the kids. That's what I believe. I mean, maybe I'm from another planet, but that's what I like to talk about on my show. I like to highlight the dads that are doing the right thing. I also highlight the moms that are doing the right things too. But as I've said before, marketing dollars being put out towards the dads.
Wow. Very interesting stuff. Just to wrap up here, to all our diversity dads out there, if there was one piece of advice you would give about fatherhood, what would that be?
My one piece of advice, and it'll be really quick, is to enjoy fatherhood. Enjoy every part of it. Because, gentlemen, when you blink your eyes, your child is heading off to college, or they're getting ready to get married, or, they're grown. For me, I tell you, for one, it feels like yesteryear that these children were born. And, you watch them mature through the years. And now they're at the point where I said to, it was so funny because daughter and I were sitting down in the kitchen table yesterday, and she's getting ready to go to high school. And I said, oh my goodness. She said, what? I said, oh my goodness. She said, what, Dad? And I said, you're going to be going to college in 4 years. You're going to be out of here. And then you're going to be an adult. You're not going to even want to hear what I have to say. You might slightly. So my message to the dads out there, take that time out to think about the time that you're spending with your children. Make every last minute count. This is going to be something that's off message, Jama'l, but my kid needed to be picked up for music lesson. She played the sax in early elementary. Guess what? I left work early. And I know everyone doesn't have that ability to do that, but if my son needed to be at a basketball practice or a swim meet, I made sure I was there. Not that the job doesn't matter, because the job is allowing you to put that roof over your head and provide for your children and your wife, and make a better way for your family. But I've been blessed to be put in a situation where I have flex time and I'm in a flexible environment, because in IT, I'm 24/7. So being in an office 9 to 5 is kind of moot point. You roll there for core hours. So I use that to my advantage whether my wife had kickboxing class, or whether my daughter had music class, or she had a volleyball class, or cheerleading, or my son had swimming, or basketball, or soccer. I used it all to my advantage. Why? Because it matters to them. It's helping develop them. Because you got to think about youth sports. What is youth sports there for? A lot of times it's there for the camaraderie. And that's helping build your children's character. So that's my suggestion, is to just be there, have your eye on the pulse, know what's happening, be involved, be hip, be in the know.
I like it. Be hip, be in the know, Diversity Dads. Amazing, amazing advice. So Ted, again, just to wrap up here, if our Diversity Dads want to get a hold of you, want to follow you, how can they get a hold of you, touch base, or hear you on your podcast?
If you want to hear of me or get in contact with me, you go on Twitter, Diversity Dad. Nah, I'm just joking. But that would be a great starting point, is to go to Diversity Dad. But you can find me on Twitter under The Real Ted Hicks, Real Ted Hicks, RealTedHicks, or Late Night Parent, LateNightParent. You can find me, our Facebook page is facebook.com/Late Night Parents. The website is latenightparents.com. And what I didn't speak about is I do a baseball podcast on Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern. It's called Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue. And it's exactly what you think the title states.
Baseball, beer, and barbecue. That's amazing. And I'm sure you guys are getting ready for the playoffs here soon.
Yes, we are. But I got to tell you, I want to thank you for allowing me on your platform, using your forum. I stepped into your pulpit, and thank you for making me feel comfortable.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on Diversity Dad, Ted. And to all our Diversity Dads out there, I want to sign off by saying, let's learn together, let's grow together, let's be dads together. Peace.
We appreciate you joining us on this episode of Diversity Dad. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and head to diversitydad.com to leave your comments and feedback so we can provide you with more stories.